Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm Roger Humphrey. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome Australian guitarist, composer, and educator Jane Darcey. Please join us as she discusses the Alexander technique, composers Gilbert and Gerald Garcia, and much, much more. Before we get started, please take a moment and hit the subscribe or follow buttons. It's a little thing, but it really goes a long way to help the channel. And we're welcoming Jane Darcey to the program. Thank you so much, Jane, for being on the program. Let me ask you real quick, like, how did you, you said you've been playing guitar since, classical guitar since 1969. How did you get interested in that?
It's an odd story. I saw a B-grade movie when I was about 10, and it was Italian, and some guy was playing Santa Lucia
Aha.
on classical guitar, which is a song we were learning at school. My family's very musical, in that we used to listen to a lot of classical music. We had a piano. My sister played it. They tried to teach me, but nah. Anyway, I heard this piece of Santa Lucia was a song we were learning at school. I heard it on the classical guitar. I said, that's my instrument. Mum, I want one of those.
How wonderful. How
Odd thing to
wonderful.
happen, but yeah. So she said, I don't believe you. There's so many things you've dropped out of, piano included. So I had to save up for 6 months. Saved my pocket money, got a bass ukulele, which is still sitting back there. Can you see it? Little ukulele.
And I have mine right here.
And you have one too.
Yes,
And
I
then
teach.
when I went to high school, I started having proper lessons on a proper guitar.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Mm.
I never did have. I took a few proper lessons when I was about 10 or 12,
Mhm.
and my teacher fired me.
Whoops.
Well, and it's a long, involved story, but basically what he did was he told my parents that I needed a better teacher than him, and so he
Okay.
he just stepped away. But I'd gone ahead and learned the
Mm.
next 3 or 4 lessons without his permission, and he took that personal and got angry with me. But I I
I
live in a
see.
small town. He was about the only teacher around, so I was kind of left to my own devices. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
but so far so good. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had lessons through high school from the guy who taught in schools from the local music school,
Uh-huh.
Zenith Music in Claremont. And when I finished school, I really didn't have a clue what I was going to do next, except I was probably going to do something in the arts, French or English, maybe. Anyway, he offered me a job teaching guitar in his shop and in schools.
There you go.
And
That
then,
that and then you're hooked.
yeah, yeah, I was. Then my parents went to England for 3 months when Dad retired, and I went with them. And I'd met John Duart. Do you know John Duart?
I
No,
not
know
personally,
the
but
name?
not personally, but I know who he is, and I know people who knew
Yeah,
him.
yeah. So he'd come to Australia and done a masterclass, which I played, saw study in B minor in the masterclass. And so my parents went to England. I went with them. I took lessons with John Duart, lived in a flat opposite his house,
Wow.
um, with a young lady called Mercedes Ozero, and went to a couple of summer schools, met David Leisner at one summer school,
Oh, wow. Okay.
met Illyrio Diaz and Cheryl Grice in
Oh,
Italy.
wow.
And from then, and Robert Duval and Jose Tomas, you know,
Oh,
because I was traveling with John Duarte. Oh, and Angelo Gilardino as well.
oh my.
Yeah, so it was just like, that was it. I was totally hooked from then on.
Oh yeah, but you're in with the big kids there.
Yeah. And then I came back and did a music degree, which was actually Jack's wife. Sorry, John Duarte's known as Jack.
Yeah.
Jack's wife, Dorothy, recommended that the best thing for me to do was to get a music degree. So I came back and did that.
Wow.
I
Good.
was the first guitarist to do a degree at UWA, the University of Western Australia.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah, it's guitar here. was not available at college level at all until about the mid 70s.
Yeah, this was 1975.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was I was number one, and I think number three was Craig Ogden.
Oh, okay. I know that
Number
name.
three or four was Craig Ogden at UWA, who's now the Royal Northern College of Music. Or
That's
I don't know what he's doing now, but certainly that's where he was teaching. Yeah.
and then you started composing as well.
Yeah, I finished my degree, got married, focused on teaching, studied the Alexander technique because I'd had some RSI and back problems, became an Alexander technique teacher, became a Suzuki teacher.
Can you expand on the Alexander technique just for a little bit for people who don't know what that is?
Oh, okay.
Just kind of a thumbnail sketch.
Yeah, very, very briefly, it's about improving the way that you move and balance your body such that your body works better.
Okay. And so and
And it's
that's helpful for performers.
very helpful for performers. It has a lot of health benefits as well. And it's used very often by actors, musicians. Julian Bream's been Alexandered. Sting
Okay.
uses the Alexander technique. Patrick Stewart is an actor in
Okay.
whom you can always see that basis of good use. Yeah, and all the royal family
Ah, really? I didn't know
get
that.
Alexandered.
Okay.
Yes, I've got a picture somewhere of the guy who used to do it. He's gone now, but yes. So it's about balance and poise, and it's done through mind process of thinking and releasing, and very very delicate hands-on guidance as well.
Oh, but
Okay.
I have heard of it. I know people who have studied it, but I've never delved into it too deeply myself. I do know that people have found it quite useful.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
know
One girl I had,
a
sorry.
lot a lot of people who would be listening to this wouldn't know what it was. So,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So anyway, so yes, that kind of worked for me. I still have residual shoulder and neck problems, but I know how to keep them under control.
there you go.
And I see a physiotherapist, and I do yoga, and I swim. I'm doing everything I can because I'm 67 now, and I'm doing everything I can to keep playing,
Yeah.
as long as I can.
Now,
Yeah.
do you perform? Well, I know I've seen videos of you on YouTube performing.
Yeah, well, I've been performing quite a lot while I was doing a master's at Wafa, which I've just completed,
Uh-huh.
and I'm just doing that final bit in a master's where you have to the examiners tell you all the little bits that need to be fixed. I'm going through that at the moment.
Yeah, but
It's
it's good to have the guidance, right? So,
Oh, it's very, very necessary, and I knew I would have to do it. But the number of tiny little typographical errors, and
uh,
it's unbelievably boring,
I,
but
what
necessary.
when I was in college, I had an English teacher who really gave me a hard time because I tend to use too many commas when I write. I- And she says, "Are you getting these by the bushel? You're just throwing."
Yeah,
Just
trying to figure out where to cut the sentence in, mate. Is Yeah, I use a lot of dashes, and the thing they call the M dashes are now very popular.
okay.
I had to re-edit all my dashes in various ways according to certain rules. I'm still going through that, but yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
funny.
so I did a lot of performing, and I had 3 years worth of lessons with British composer Gilbert
Yeah, I was
while
going
I
to
was
ask you
doing my
about him. Yes,
masters. Yeah.
I know the name, and actually I had a quartet that he had written, or a piece for four guitars. That
Is
was,
that the simple one?
you know what, I wouldn't know,
Okay.
and I had bought it in
Yeah.
part because it was on sale, and I was conducting a guitar ensemble at that particular time, and I thought it might be kind of an interesting piece to give to them. and through a variety of reasons, it never got to them. Um,
Yeah.
and then a few years ago, I lost a lot of music through a fire, and
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah.
that's okay. Thank you.
It would either have been the Four Waltzes, but it was more likely to be the piece he wrote when he was teaching in London, which was like a little suite of pieces.
And truthfully, I don't recall anymore. I remember getting it
Right.
and looking at it, thinking this might be
Yeah.
fun, and then just kind of
Yeah.
set it aside, and that's as far as it went. So
Okay.
tell me about working with him and studying with him.
Yeah, I was kind of going to backtrack a little bit and say, yes, I did start composing.
Oh,
And
yes,
the
please.
reason I started composing was at one of the schools I teach. The head of music told me that they couldn't afford for me to buy ensemble music for the group. And I was like, right, we need new music. I'm going to start writing music. So that was my initial impetus. And to my surprise, I found that I was able to do that, which I didn't think I was creative as a musician until I
Oh,
tried.
nice. I,
And
I,
then, yeah. And
I
then I did
all
that for a long time. Hmm?
I also conduct an ensemble, and
Yeah.
so I might be interested in looking at some of your pieces for ensemble. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
that would be kind of
I can send you some things.
okay.
Anyway, what came out of that in the very long run, because that was many, many years ago, was that I ended up, I made a couple of CDs that included my own music, and the second one was quite recent, and I actually got it recorded very, very well by an excellent sound engineer named Lee Buddle,
Okay.
who I think has done some of Craig Ogden's recordings and certainly
Okay.
has done Professor Jonathan Paget's recordings. Anyway, I bumped into Gilbert online as one does,
Mhm.
on Facebook actually,
Here we
because
are.
he was a friend of Gerald Garcia's, and I was a friend of Gerald Garcia's who had come over to Australia a couple of times. And I sent Gilbert my CD because he was so incredibly friendly when I spoke to him. Because in my mind, he's one of these esoteric, brilliant, modern music, God kind of characters.
Uh-huh.
That was that was my thinking about him from when I was 17 and people were, excuse me, I'll just get rid of this. There we go. People were playing his music, bringing some of his music over to Australia. So Gerald played some of his music, and I think Sepa Sierra did as well. Anyway, I sent him my little CD, and he said absolutely lovely things about it.
Well, how nice.
And then he sent me a couple of his pieces, and I started looking at them and got really seriously intrigued and started researching it. And then I had a few lessons with him, and we got talking. And I'd always wanted to do a master's in composition, and it all just kind of clicked together. So I'll do a master's analyzing this guy's music and work, which fascinates me and intrigues me, is obviously very highly intellectual,
Yeah.
but also emotionally deep. And it also has these really sweet, beautiful, gentle bits, which are almost like the best popular music,
Okay.
really lovely. And it was like, oh yeah, and ethnic, obviously, Middle Eastern stuff,
Right.
yeah. And it was like, what is he doing? How is he doing this? I want to know more.
I've listened
So,
to some of the preludes,
mm,
and they're absolutely. I mean, I love them. I mean, I just think they're wonderful. So I put them side by side with uh, the preludes and fugues by Koshkin. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I
Nikita
remember when
Koshkin.
costume was big, but I don't know the Preludes and Fugues. I know the Prince's Choice, of
Oh yeah.
course.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and the waltz from the house
Yeah. The Usher
of
waltz.
Usher.
Usher
Yes,
waltz.
the
Right.
Usher waltz.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. He's brilliant. I actually got in contact with him a while ago, and he sent me some ensemble music, and
Oh,
I'd
cool.
forgotten about it. I must look that up and see if it's useful for us to do. Yeah, but yes, I think Koshkin is a good match actually.
I think
Uh,
yeah, just the music, the way it's written and such.
yes,
They're in their own language, but it's still accessible.
yes, exactly right. Yes. Although the second book of preludes hasn't been recorded yet.
Yeah, this was
I
the
do
first.
know one guitarist who's considering it. So you will have heard only music from the first book of preludes,
Correct.
1 to
Cor-
12. Yeah. I've played number 13 a lot and I love that. And I'm still trying to get it up to the right speed because it's quite a difficult. His music is not easy to play,
uh-huh.
but it is so worth it. And it's like I had to really extend my technique to play it and to understand it, and he taught me that.
Oh,
So,
cool.
my thesis has got a whole section on lessons with him and all the various things that we worked on to improve my technique and uh,
Good
and
teacher then.
recordings. Hmm?
He was a good teacher.
Best I've ever come across.
Oh my. That says a lot right there.
It really, well, maybe, I mean, Tim Kaine is brilliant. I don't know if you know of Tim
I don't know
Kaine.
that name. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. He used to, he and David Russell used to tour through Europe doing all the competitions, and
Oh,
one or two of them would win, you know. But he settled in Canberra, at the Canberra School of Music, and he was their guitar teacher for many, many years.
okay.
And I would say he was the best, certainly the most erudite and varied um, concert guitarist in Australia.
Oh my.
He's
Okay.
retired now, but yeah,
Sure.
he was a superb teacher. It's different. Gilbert's more kind of passionate and inspirational.
Ah,
Tim Kaine's very, very gentle, detailed, and precise, and patient, and understanding, and totally implacable. You don't get away with anything. He's wonderful. And Gerald Garcia is another kind of teacher who's absolutely brilliant. And he is really so much fun and very enthusiastic and has all sorts of kind of, I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen him teach lately. I met up with him again in England, but when he was in the 70s, when he, no, 70s and 80s, when he came to us, um, it was all about kind of body work and ease of movement and playfulness and fun. Very much on the playful side. So they're my three ideal teachers. Those three
so,
guys.
so that's kind of your what's the word, model. That's kind of model your own teaching after people like that.
Well, you have to be who you are, don't you?
Yeah.
I just noticed that their different ways is what worked for them, and it was wonderful. And I have my own way, and I couldn't tell you really how I teach because it's
I
so hard to step back and look at yourself, you know.
I had
But
I
I
had
do.
I had a young student tell me one time many years ago that he said, he said, whenever we get together, he says, we have a lot of fun. And he says, I don't ever remember you teaching me anything, but he says, I still play pretty good. He said, I'm not sure how you did that.
Teach them to access their inner child.
So yeah, that's
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 where music comes
it's
from.
it
Yeah.
was funny. So I guess that says a lot about my teaching style. I'm not entirely sure what whether it's good or bad, but I guess it works. So that's
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's funny. So when you
Yeah.
were working with Gilbert, uh,
Mm.
uh, it, approaching his music, is that different than approaching like standard repertoire? Do you kind of look at things a little differently that way?
It's written differently, and every piece is very different. Every piece he writes is its own individual piece, but also they are all individual. They're all recognizable as Gilbert's music,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Okay, but I mean, one piece might use patterns on the guitar, but that's quite rare. But I can think of at least one study that uses very obvious guitaristic patterns. A lot of them have a lot of counterpoint, especially in inner voices.
okay.
He paid a lot of attention to teaching me to play chords and to bring out all of different voices in the chords without any arpeggiation. He demonstrated tone, three different kinds of basic tone, which were the left, the middle, and the right side of the nail.
Okay.
So he used all three sides of the nail to develop tone, which I haven't heard of anywhere else. You usually get people are passionate about which bit of the nail they use, you know.
Right.
But he wanted to use everything there, and he had different wrist and arm and hand movements for bringing out chords in different ways. One he called swan's neck, which was that kind of movement,
Uh-huh.
although that's that's not it. That's very basic. But the idea of bending the wrist and bringing the hands in deep at the same time, when you get it, it's an absolutely magical sound.
Oh.
But it was only one of the varieties. So he showed me a huge amount of different tone on the right hand. In the left hand, I had to get used to reading lots of flats, to thinking much more about the musical line than about ease of playing. You know,
Right.
like not always. I mean, there's one piece where there are three melodic notes and one's on the 10th fret on an inner string, and then there's an open string, and then there's a harmonic. But in
Wow.
another piece, yes, in another piece, there's a descending line. He wants it all on the third string. No, no, you can't use the open B there. Right? So, yeah, very lots of counterpoint, stretching, flats, lots of work on the left hand to get all the fingers really, really independent. He didn't like my vibrato at all, and I'm still working on that. Um, he was reasonably happy with my left hand setup.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
In
That's
general. But yeah, and huge amounts of work on releasing shoulders and neck and jaw so that your hands would really work
uh-huh.
um, to the best of their ability, and learning to memorize the music by visualizing the notation, learning to visualize music notation
So you can see it.
in my head.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a long and ongoing process, but now whenever I'm playing a piece and I start to find I'm having trouble remembering it, because
Uh,
my automatic go-to is a mixture of memory, um, sort of remembering where my fingers go, remembering the names of the notes, but as soon as I go straight to the actually seeing the black dots, as soon as I access that part of my mind, which I still have trouble accessing easily because it's not something I've done until the last 3 years,
right.
it's much, much easier to remember and to
Yeah,
play through it.
I've always suffered from memory lapses when I perform. I almost always take music on stage. Not all of the music, but a good portion of it. And
Same. So that's why we did a lot of work on that.
I see.
Yeah, and the idea is that you lie down and you go into a state of total relaxation, and then you read the music, and you close your eyes and see it in your mind.
I know
Okay?
Aaron Shearer used to teach that same.
Did
Well,
he?
yeah, that was kind of a big thing with him.
Right, I didn't know
According
that.
to Aaron Shearer, um, uh, you should be able to study a score while you're flying in an airplane and to go play the piece in concert. Uh,
Yes, I've heard that before too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I, I'm not that talented.
I'm not that talented. Listen, I can't look at the black dots on the page and hear the music in my mind yet, but I'm working on it
Uh-huh.
and I'm improving in that area.
Well, that's
So he very much very highly, incredibly intellectual bloke. Um, People who knew him well, like John Holmquist,
uh-huh.
Ricardo Isnola.
John Holmquist from
Yeah,
Cleveland is Cleveland.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
right.
He was a
Okay.
very close friend of Gilbert's and played a lot of his music. And another.
One of my former students was John Holmquist's last student there in his master's
Wow,
program. There's a connection for
wonderful.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I interviewed John just before he passed. Um, he agreed to a set of three interviews
Oh,
about
what?
Gilbert's life because they had been so close and he played
Uh-huh.
so much of his music. I interviewed 15 concert guitarists.
Wow.
It's been huge.
I would love to read your paper when
Absolutely
when you publish it, when
fascinating.
you're ready. I'd love to read your paper.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be done. It's 47,000 something words.
oh, it may take me a day or two.
And and I think it was 50 minutes of recorded music
Oh,
as well.
wow.
So
So,
it was let's see, the four songs of the seasons, Prelude 4, Columbine, which you will know incredibly well. Anyone who's listened to his music knows
uh-huh.
Prelude number 4. Prelude number 13, which everyone should be playing, is one of the great post-romantic pieces,
Okay.
really. Yeah. And the Church Bells of Yenikoi, which had never been performed before until I played it with my supervisor,
Oh,
um,
wow.
Associate Professor Jonathan Paget, and we had two other people who both played the other part because one wasn't available, all the
Uh-huh.
time. One was Ethan Dorian and the other was Morgan Rematch, and the three that's actually been recorded. I'm not incredibly happy with the recording. Not particularly happy with the balance, but the feel is good, and I'll probably put it out there just so people know. It's one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever come across.
Oh, I'm
The
anxious
Church
to
Bells
hear
of
it now.
Jericho.
I'm definitely
Yeah,
anxious to
it's
hear it now.
it's, it's lovely. It was written as an in memoriam for his mother,
Oh, how beautiful.
and it was about the little village where he grew up, which had many church bells.
Oh, how cool. How
It's
cool.
gorgeous. Very complex piece. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you also belong to the Western Australia Classical Guitar Society, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm the vice president.
Oh, yeah, that's belonging. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't want to go any further than that. Don't want to be president. Yeah, may have to at some point, rather not. But yeah, I've been directing we're now calling it the West Australian Guitar Orchestra, or the Classical Guitar Society Orchestra,
Okay.
uh, for any number of years. I can't remember how long I've been involved in it, forever, really, and directing it for I don't know, 10 years, 7 years, something like that. No idea. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I am a big fan of those kinds of organizations. I belong to one here in
Mm,
Michigan, um,
yeah,
where I live, and and I conduct the group, and
fantastic.
we have a nice setup, and I had mentioned to a few other people that I was going to be speaking with you this evening, and I thought maybe that they might like to ask a question or two, but I didn't hear anything. So,
Okay,
but
right, yeah,
but
yeah.
now you're doing this. How big of a group is it? I mean, in preparing for this, I saw a couple of your videos online. It looks
Yeah,
to be a pretty sizable group.
it varies all the time. I think it's about 12 at the moment, but
Okay,
it kind of goes down to 10 and up to 15, generally speaking. Doesn't get much beyond 15. And as I'm getting interested in more complex repertoire, we're playing more complex repertoire, and that keeps the numbers down a bit, because
sure.
people come in and they think, yeah, this is too hard. But we also have Peter Altmaier Mort has started what he calls a training orchestra, which is only meeting once a month at the moment,
Uh-huh.
for people who are not quite up to whatever the standard my group is in,
Sure.
and that's that's shown to be very popular. We also have guitar forums. Graham Wood has started guitar forums for adult performers only, just where people can play when they're amateur adults and they want to play, but they don't want the pressure of real serious performing. And that's going, and it's a social thing as well, and that's going very well. But the big thing we do every year is we have a guitar ensemble festival.
Oh,
And we have in WA, we're really, really fortunate. We have an instrumental school services, and the state schools get tuition in classical instruments. Only certain children, they have to go through a procedure to be chosen, but they actually get subsidized by the state to play an instrument. And the classical guitar program there is very big. So
Wow.
we have a lot of our state schools, not private schools, that's what we
Uh-huh.
call them here. Um, a lot of our state schools have really good classical guitar programs and superb teachers. I don't know how they do it because they're working with 5 or 6 kids at a time, and I can't do that. Um, and they have really good ensemble programs. So primary schools and high schools come and play at a big weekend festival, have upwards of 60 entries, guitar ensembles,
Wow. That's big.
and we import a concert guitarist to give a recital on the Thursday or the Friday night, and then spend the weekend listening to upwards 60 guitar ensembles, and they're always wrecked by the end of it. But we've had some fantastic people. Most recently, it was Rupert Boyd,
Oh, yeah.
who's
I,
now
I
in
don't
New
know him,
York.
but I know who he is.
Yeah, so Boyd Meets Girl came and played a cello and guitar
Oh, wow.
recital. And
That's
then he did the adjudicating everybody all weekend, bless
wow.
his heart. Yeah.
Wow. So
And who else have we had that you would know? I can't remember the names. Damn.
now I
There's
have
a guy who's one of the best in the world. All I can think about him right now is that I know he smokes cigars. And his first name begins with an M, and he plays the Pompe variations brilliantly. Incredible musician, but I can't remember his name. I'm
one
sorry.
one of the guests on my podcast during the lockdown
Hmm.
was a fellow by the name of Ken Cook, who teaches in Adelaide in the school system there. And
Okay.
so
I'm not sure whether I've met him. I go to Adelaide for their winter guitar festival sometime that's run by the Gregorian brothers
oh,
and Paul Svoboda, who's, if you're looking for classical guitar, beautiful and joyful and light-hearted and accessible and really good quality music
uh-huh,
for ensembles.
uh-huh.
Okay, Paul Svoboda, Svoboda.
I
Okay,
ran across that name in your information. So yes.
please check him out. Please
Okay.
go to his website because his music is absolutely adored by every teenager I have ever met.
Really? Okay. Well,
Really,
I'll definitely have to get
really.
in. I'll have to get into
It's
that.
fun and it's lively, and some of it's jazz based, some of it's blues based, and it's always really touches the heart.
My the group that I'm with is a mixture of professionals, very talented amateurs, and not so talented but earnest
Yeah,
amateurs.
yeah, yeah,
And so I've been arranging the music to accommodate every level within the
yeah,
same piece. And so,
yeah,
yeah, always on the
yeah,
lookout.
yeah. Yeah, well, usually Paul and Richard do that. The parts 3 and 4 are relatively simple for like grade 3 kind of,
Uh-huh.
or even less, grade 2, 3 people, and then the top parts are the most complex. The other Australian composer whose ensemble music is superb is Richard Charlton, and he
Okay.
has a strong international reputation.
I'll have to look into these
Seriously,
folks.
I mean, about these guitar festivals, that
Uh-huh.
the guy comes in and watches 60 or more groups playing, and they say that was really lovely, but you hear a lot of Paul Svoboda and Richard Charlton. And we say, yeah, you do. The music's brilliant. Everyone loves it. you know.
That
So
sounds
they deserve to be better known internationally. They really do.
so.
The music's
Uh,
gorgeous.
and I wanted to touch real quickly on the idea that you're a Suzuki teacher as well. You have a
Mhm.
Suzuki. Do you have a Suzuki a studio rather? Uh,
I did have, and I teach Suzuki method at one of the schools
okay.
that I'm at now. But I I basically taught Suzuki when I was teaching mostly from home, when my children were young.
I see.
And I could only, and that's not quite right, actually. Anyway, I taught Suzuki because oh no, that's right. I started teaching it in a school many years
Gotcha.
ago, and I also taught it from home. I had a very strong focus on it for many years, and I now have a student who's in her second year at UWA, who's been with me since the age of 5.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's with the tertiary school with Dr. Jonathan Fitzgerald now
I see.
at UWA, but she was my student until the end of year 12, which is when the high school finishes here.
Right. Ours too.
And and another student who's never taken guitar particularly seriously, but always has loved it, who's been with me from the age of 5, plays bass in my orchestra, and Joe plays treble. Jocelyn Leahy is her name, and you can watch out for her. I think she's going to go places.
Name again, please.
Jocelyn Leahy, Leahy. Yeah,
Thank you.
but she's in her second year at university and doing really well. And she loves and plays Gilbert's preludes as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I don't do as much Suzuki teaching as I used, but it's like if anyone wants a young child taught from the age of 4, I can do that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. And I really enjoy it. I love their focus on getting the ear going first.
Right.
Getting the ear and the technique going before you actually read the music.
Yes.
I think that's the correct logical place to start, because you no one asks the baby to learn the alphabet before they talk, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I agree. I agree. When I taught young children for a very long time, and it was before the Suzuki guitar program even existed. So I had to, I read Dr. Suzuki's stuff and looked at the violin method and it kind of created some materials on my own. And I was, and then later, a couple of years later, I went back and revised them and made some changes. But the basic principles are that yes, we speak before we read, and so you should play music before you start reading it as well. And I have
one step at a time, and celebrate every step.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so important,
It is. Well, Jane, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hang out with me. I hope you'll consider maybe doing this again sometime in the future.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope it's been useful.
Oh, it's
interesting.
Absolutely, all of that and then some. Thank you so much. So, thank you.
Right.
I want to thank Jane for taking time to be on the show, and I want to thank you too for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you will listen to more episodes of Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.